Okay, so from the lines 360, so we're now, at this point, we are here in the story. So this is like the last section, okay? In lines 360 to 5, this is the last part of the story. Tim spends some time with Elroy on a boat that is between America and Canada, with the Canadian border only being a few meters away, like you see the Canadian border. So when given the opportunity and being shown the way to do exactly what he had been thinking about doing this whole time, which is running away to Canada, Tim has a change of heart and makes the decision on what he knows he must do. So Tim decides that he should return home to his family and friends and to fight in a war that he does not believe in. Although he was shown the way to get to Canada by Elroy, he has like a battle of within himself between his logic, his thoughts, and his emotions or his heart. So it comes to an end, and he decides that what is best for him to do is to go to war. And although he is scared of the war and afraid for his life, he knows that he cannot simply run away from his life in America, because that would not solve all of the issues, and that he must do what he knows is right. So in this section, this is what this whole section is about. So I'm going to break it down a little bit further. For these lines, on the 6th day, so he's been at this cabin now for 6 days, okay? And on the 6th day of him staying with Elroy, they get on a fishing boat together. They get on a boat together. They take the boat to a place that is far enough away from the hotel and is very obviously between the American border and the Canadian border. The American border and the Canadian border. So Elroy wanted to take Tim here and continued to remain silent as he began fishing. Tim was then forced to make the decision for his life himself. Elroy planned the trip to where they are to give Tim the option that he was too scared to make on his own. So at this point, again, just ask yourself, what do you think he will do? So basically, Elroy is giving the tools, saying, look, we're on a boat. He's not saying this to him directly, but he's bringing him on a boat and being like, look, all you need to do is jump. So he turns his back and just starts fishing. Elroy just turns his back and starts fishing. So being so close to the Canadian border from the boat, Tim, all he needs to do, he can jump and swim about 20 meters and he will be in Canada. So when it comes time to make this decision, he decides, he still seems very confused and he's still conflicted within himself. So he's trying to figure out and understand his own feelings and emotions. And while he's sort of asking the audience or the reader, everything that he's sort of telling us what's going on through his mind. He finally realizes that he cannot jump off and swim to Canada from where he is, and just begins quietly crying to himself. Tim is crying because when being given the chance to do what he thought that he wanted to do, he realizes that he cannot act. He's unable to do what he thought he wanted to do. And he feels like he is a coward to his own emotions. So he feels like he's not doing right by his own emotions, because he's being a coward to them in order to do what his logical mind is telling him what to do. So basically, he's turning his back on how he feels in order to do what he is afraid to do. So for this next section, Tim realizes that what he wants to do is harder than it would be. He is in a conflict within himself, and he is slowly realizing that his fantasy or his dream of running away to Canada is only a fantasy. It's only a dream. He is fighting within himself to do what he believes is right and what he believes he wants. So he wants to run away, but what's right is that he goes to war. Although he does not want to go to war, he also does not want to be considered a coward or a criminal to his own country. In the next section, Tim is having a battle within his mind. One side of the river is America and his family and all of the heroes and all of the things that wars have been fought over, and all of the politicians telling him that the war is acceptable and that everything that they're doing is right. And then on the other side is Canada, with all of these people telling him that the war is wrong and that he should not be supporting this war in the first place. So he's having like a hallucination. He's like in a dream, and he sees one side of the river as America, telling him all of these things like go to war, be with the family, this is right. And the other side of the river is Canada, with all of these protesters and all of these politicians and all of these journalists saying the war is wrong, don't support the war, this is a wrong war. So he's having like a hallucination, and he's torn between the two sides of the battle within his mind, and also literally on the river. So he sort of has this moment where he tries to force himself to jump off the boat, but his body will not let him jump off the boat. So finally, after like this big internal struggle, this big fight that he has within himself, and after not being able to jump off the boat, he decides to go through all of the reasons why he should fight and go to the Vietnam War. He thinks about his family and his friends and all of the things that they would label him as, and it fills him with shame and sorrow and embarrassment. So he realizes that if he runs away, all of his family and all of his friends would not accept him anymore. They would abandon him. They would kick him out. They would be ashamed of him. They would be mad at him. They would be embarrassed by him and for him. So Elroy, the old man, realizes that he won't jump off the boat. So he turns around and goes back to the inn. So Elroy's just been sitting there quietly fishing while this young kid is behind him, like freaking out in his mind, going through all of these things in his mind and having a bad trip, basically, where Elroy's looking like, is he going to jump? Is he not going to jump? And finally he realizes this kid's not going to jump. So he turns around the boat. So although he doesn't say much, Elroy seems to show Tim how he is meant to feel with his eyes and his gestures. So Elroy just like sort of looks at him. He doesn't say anything. He just looks at him and tells him with just his eyes and his body, he understands. And he doesn't judge him. He doesn't make him feel bad. He just wants to show him what his options are. He's just trying to be this figure for him and be like, look, you can do any of these two things. The choice is yours. Do what you feel is right. Do what you feel you should do. But he doesn't actually say any of this. He's just being the silent man there, allowing Tim to work this all out for himself. So the story ends with Tim peacefully leaving the inn, the hotel, where Elroy left him to run while Elroy left him alone to run some errands. So he leaves the inn and walks back to his car and just drives back home. That's where the story sort of ends. He realizes like, okay, look, I'm just going to do this. I need to stop running away from my responsibility. It's time, and he just packs his stuff, goes home, ends up going to war, which is what this whole final section of the story is about. It ends really nicely, actually. It talks about how he how he survived the war. He ends up, meeting he survived the war. He ends up meeting a wife, his wife, having a family, all this stuff, and it ends like very nicely. But it's like it's a very peaceful ending, and this story is a lot about just interpersonal struggle, about doing what is right, or what you're being told is right, versus what you feel you want to do. I thought this was something you guys might kind of care about. If you were